Hello cruel world. Organised versus disorganised serial killers. What's the difference? Spoiler alert, it's got nothing to do with filofaxes. What are the different character traits? What are the different psychological processes that drives them? What are their motivations? And also, what's the difference in the types of murders they commit? What kind of psychological traits might be reflected in the actual murder scene itself? Which of those killers is actually easier to catch? Plus, a psychoanalysis of Ted Bundy, your favourite serial killer. My name is Dr. Sohom. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living so that you don't have to. Okay, let's get straight into this. So what's a disorganised serial killer like? Well, he's a bit of a loser who has zero social skills. He might live alone, or maybe he lives with his parents. Maybe he's got an unhealthy relationship with his cats. He finds it really difficult to get on with people and to form relationships. So he's probably described as like that quiet, creepy kid. He's kind of polite, kind of docile. He finds it difficult to hold down a steady job because he can't get along with people. However, he might find a particular niche that he's really good at, sort of like an isolated kind of job, not a lot of human contact. So I'm not saying that everybody who works in IT is a serial killer, but I'm kind of heavily implying it. Your disorganized serial killer doesn't look great. I'm not saying he's necessarily ugly. People can't help it if they're born ugly. When I say people, I mean you. What I'm saying is that he doesn't put much effort into his physical appearance, might be unkempt, might have poor personal hygiene, might have a messy house, messy car, messy room, messy hair. So let's go on to the next bit, which is the psychoanalysis, like the mental health structure of a disorganized serial killer. That is my expertise. Professionally, I assess people with mental illnesses who've committed a whole range of offences, occasionally including murder. So your disorganized serial killer doesn't put much thought or effort or planning into their actions. As the name suggests, disorganized, it does what it says on the tin. Your disorganized killer won't travel too far from home to kill. They kind of lack confidence, and they might have below average intelligence. They might have mental health issues such as psychosis, paranoia, schizophrenia. I've actually got an episode on what schizophrenia is, as well as episodes on hearing voices and delusions, which are the main types of symptoms of psychosis. Always be plugging. Now, I just want to make it absolutely crystal clear before you trolls get on your little keyboard. The vast majority of people with psychosis won't kill or even commit a violent offence. I literally assess people with psychosis who have committed violence. So I see that subsect for a living. And I have to say that maybe less than 5% of the patients that I've assessed have actually killed somebody. It's usually assault or agitation, maybe some sort of arson or sexual assault. So in terms of psychological processes and outlooks, pay attention nerds, here comes the science. Your typical disorganized serial killer has never been in a serious relationship. They're kind of like the spotty virgin who is sexually incompetent. As I said before, they're like withdrawn, they're a bit of a loner, they're maybe a bit of a loser. Maybe they hate all of society, or maybe they hate women specifically because of their lack of sexual conquest. So they target women, particularly vulnerable women, such as sex workers. This kind of description fits in, I think, really well with Jake Davison. So he is the young man who committed the Plymouth killings in August last year. The first mass shooting in the UK for over 10 years. I've done a video on him, of course, always be plugging, when I was on my boy Sean Atwood's channel, so go chiggity, check it out. So dear viewers and true crime fans, which I think a lot of you are, can you give me examples of serial killers that fit into the disorganized category? Everything I've talked about so far. If you do know, then let me know in the schmomich below. Okay, let's move on to organised killers. What are organised killers like? Well, they have average intelligence or maybe even above average intelligence, and they have adequate interpersonal skills. Plus, they put effort into their appearance, so they can have romantic relationships, sexual relationships. They can, get married, they can have children. The organised killer will put effort into their appearance, and they will maintain relatively good levels of hygiene. What I'm trying to say is they'll tidy their room and they will fold their underwear. Some organised killers might tire of long-term relationships. They might jump from one relationship to another, but the point is that they're able to form relationships, unlike their disorganised brethren. Organised killers look good. I'm not saying they're handsome. People can't help it if they're born good looking. And I say people, I'm talking about me. But they might be probably charming, or at least well groomed. And they can kind of, they can get people's confidence. They can talk the talk. They can trick other people into thinking that they're normal, despite all of those kind of violent fantasies and all this hellish turmoil going on in their heads. So they remind me of psychopaths. So I talk about psychopaths quite a lot, and I've worked with many and I've diagnosed them officially. So see my video series on psychopath if you're interested in that kind of thing. In my videos, I talk about the definition of a psychopath. I talk about how some psychopaths are not violent, but succeed in the world of business. I've actually done a psychoanalysis of both Michael Jordan and also the character Anna Delvey from Netflix. And I've used a psychopath test on them. So if you want to think like a forensic psychiatrist, then you should go check those videos out, because I use the tool to decide whether they're clinical psychopaths or not. Just to be clear though, I'm not saying all serial killers are necessarily psychopaths, because to be a psychopath, you have to be good at lying and manipulation, and not all serial killers, even organised ones, are necessarily good at those things. However, they generally can hold down a good job, they may drive a good car, they may own a nice house, they might have the perfect family.
Got a beautiful wife, kids, and a gorgeous home. What would make me want to jump in the tub with a cordless phone?
Sorry. So your organised killer, he's the one going to the community events, he's on your bowling team, he basically sneaks in and appears very normal. He's on your Sunday night pub quiz team. He's the vice president of your Morris dancing club. In terms of the psychological processes and outlooks of an organised killer, pay attention nerds, here comes the science. They can understand right from wrong, so they're not delusional, unlike some disorganized people. They are very good at fooling other people into thinking that they're normal. In fact, it gives them pleasure. It's part of the game. It's, their whole one of their motivations is that they can trick other people. So as the saying goes, fool me once, shame on me, fool all of society several times, and go around killing innocent people, shame on you. So organised killers generally do not suffer delusions, they do not suffer hallucination. They might commit murders because it gives them sexual gratification as well. And whereas the disorganised offender sees himself as inadequate, the organised killer is often quite narcissistic. He believes that he's smarter than everyone else, he taunts the police, and he might even taunt the family of his victims. So dear viewers, again, I know some of you are true crime buffs. Can you give me examples of serial killers who have taunted the police or wider society? Let me know in the comments below. Let's get into the juicy bit, otherwise known as the money shot. What are the different types of murders committed, and what are the different kind of MOs between disorganized and organized? Before I tell you that, let me introduce you to this channel. My name is Dr. Sohom Das. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess professionally mentally disordered offenders in courts and in prisons and in psychiatric units. You can call me the ominous Sohominous. I am your favourite Asian London-based forensic psychiatry YouTuber, or at least in your top 5. This channel is a smorgasbord of videos related to mental illness or offending, or the crossover between the two. I've done videos on the chip killer, Anthony Joseph. I've done videos on the psychology behind pathological liars with a case example, and the psychology behind domestic violence with a case example. So if you're a true crime fan, or if you're interested in mental illness, this channel is for you. I implore you to subscribe. Not only does it help me out immeasurably, but if you don't, I'm gonna come around to your house, I'm gonna finish all your cereal, but I'm gonna put the empty boxes back. I know how much that pisses you off. The whole reason for me making this channel, my whole motivation is I want you to start thinking like a forensic psychiatrist. Plus, to a degree, I also want to take over the world. I'll deal with that later. I want you to start to analyze and dissect cases like a professional, both from a psychiatric and also a legal perspective. Okay, back to the video. So with a disorganized murder, they do what we call a blitz attack. So they kind of surprise their victim because they lack the charm and the interpersonal skills to trick them or to trick others. And often they will choose their victim at random. So it's literally somebody who's in the wrong place at the wrong time, which is kind of scary and it's kind of frightening when you think about it because it could be anybody. Could be you. Dun, dun, dun. So it's very much a crime of opportunity. The murder itself is usually sort of frenzied, hence the word blitz, usually barbaric, usually overkill. For example, they might stab their victim dozens of times, which kind of reminds me of the murder of 𝐏𝐬𝐲𝐡 𝐅𝐸𝐬𝐲. Not sure if you guys have heard of that. Very well known, quite shocking crime, really, really sad, tragic case where a completely innocent, very pretty ex-model young mother is stabbed by a random stranger on Wimbledon Common. Of course, I've done a video on that where I delve into the very weird sting operation that was set up by a forensic psychologist, which ultimately led to them catching the wrong perpetrator, or the police. It misled the police. Anyway, I don't have time to go into it now, but check out the video. Always be plugging. So the disorganized murders might do shocking things to the body after the person's died, all kinds of sexual poses, because they depersonalize the victim. They don't even really see the victim as a real human at all. So I'm sure some of you have heard of people that have done stuff to bodies after killing, so please let me know in the 𝐿𝐻𝐻 below. Disorganized killers, serial killers, as the name suggests, they have a lack of planning. So they don't have a murder kit, for example. It's unlikely that they will, for example, stalk their victims in advance or try and calculate their routines. So there might be some psychological traits that are reflected in a chaotic kind of murder scene because the killer themselves feels fear, confusion, anxiety. So it's all very messy. There's like a lack of cleanup. There's little or no effort to hide the body or to dispose of the murder weapon. They don't clear up the crime scene. They're not sort of interested in following news coverage to see what's going on with the murder. So as you can imagine, this kind of killer is a lot easier to catch than an organized killer because they don't, they don't clean up after themselves or get rid of clues. However, the randomness of the victims and the methods, and it's also disjointed and inconsistent, makes it difficult for police to join the dots in the first place to connect the murders together. Does that make sense? So what I'm saying is it's harder for the police to realize that it's one person committing these murders, but once they do realize, when they're trying to catch the perpetrator, then it's a bit easier. Whereas an organized murder is all about planning and deceit. They might trick, they might bargain with, they might sweet talk their victims into being captured. For example, a clear example of this would be Wayne Couzens, who used his position of authority to kill Sarah Everett. I'm sure you guys have heard of that case. Really, really horrible. Again, just completely senseless, random sexual gratification, nasty piece of work. The organized killer will generally have some sort of plan. So when they go out hunting for a victim, it's not just random. They might stalk their victim, for example. They might work out their schedules, just basically what the word organized means. They might have a rape kit or a murder kit, and this is a bit shocking to say, but they improve on their mistakes. So they learn what they need to do better next time to make them more efficient at killing. For them, it's all about controlling the situation. They like to make the most out of the murder. They like to savor it, just like your mother's vegetarian lasagna. They might fantasize about their next kill, again, wanting to improve it, which all of these things makes it much more difficult to identify and capture them. All in all, they'll become more kind of confident per kill. And the thing that's different between their crime scene is that there's multiple kind of relevant scenes. What do I mean by that? So there might be a scene where the organized killer meets the victim and leads them away, where they kill them, and then where they hide the body. Unlike a disorganized killer, where all three of those things might happen in the same place. Organized offenders are a lot more crafty, so they clean up the crime scene, dispose of the weapon, they closely follow the news reports because they want to know, if they've gotten away with it. And sometimes they even attempt to inject themselves into the investigation so that they can get extra clues of what's going on. Again, true crime fans will know examples of this. Again, let me know in the 𝐿𝐻𝐻 below. An organized serial killer is far more likely to revisit the crime scene or to keep a trophy, like a body part, for example, to relive and fantasize about the murder in their head. What's quite interesting is it can actually change over time. So a disorganized killer might calm down and over time become more organized, or an organized killer might have mental health problems, like might have a breakdown. So they might become more organized. Okay, final bit. Come on, let's keep going. Let's keep it moving. I ain't got time for shucking and jiving. Was Ted Bundy organized or disorganized? The answer is quite interesting, I think. So I think he started off as organised. However, he became disorganised towards the end of his killing kind of career. Why? Because his urge to kill people was becoming stronger and stronger. He became more impulsive, he found it harder to resist it, so he's taking less precautions. For example, he started to carry out indiscriminate attacks, which from his point of view compared to before is actually quite risky. He's also drinking every night, which lowered his inhibitions. So this made him impulsive, it made him less careful. By the way, see my series on alcohol and crime where I dissect how alcohol is related to certain crimes and also how alcohol is related to mental illness and kind of how it's all tied in together. It's very layered, it's very clever. Watch it, steal my ideas, impress your friends at dinner parties. Okay, we're almost getting to the end of this episode. I'm a very busy man, I'm very, very important. Not really. To conclude, what did we learn? We learned the differences between organised and disorganised killers. We learned that they have different character traits, but more than that, different psychological processes. We learned about the different types of murders they commit. And as a result of that, the different types of murder scenes that they leave behind. We learned that your mother makes a nice vegetarian lasagna. We learned which type of killer is a lot easier to catch. We also did a brief psychoanalysis of Ted Bundy and learned that he's actually a little bit of both. So started off organised, went disorganised. Right, I'm almost done. I just want to say that I've got a book out on the 10th of March 2022. It's called In Two Minds. It's a bit like this YouTube channel, but a lot more kind of detailed. So I go in a lot more detail into my own cases. And if you can't read, that's no excuse because I've gotten an Audible version, which I read out myself. It took me days. So you've got to go check it out. Please tell everybody about this channel. Please subscribe. I'm a very shallow man and I need revalidation. But whatever happens, stay euthymic and do not forget, life is also meant for living, you know.